Welcome to Living Chassidus. Together, let's live the Chassidus we learn.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Chassidus in the morning with maamer for Pesach. Maamer for Yud Daled Nissan. So, Matzah Zu, last maamer the Rebbe said. So we're talking about, and essentially what we're doing now is we're summarizing the Friedrich Rebbe's maamer, the Alter Rebbe's maamer, and when discussing a question we had is that we say in Agada, we said Matzah Zu Shana this matzah we eat is why? It's because the dirt didn't have enough time to rise when we left Egypt. So the question is, aren't we eating the matzah because the Jews was commanded to eat matzah? There was a matzah for the carbon Pesach that eat matzah. So why are we saying that the reason we eat the matzah is because they didn't have time to rise, which is a matzah that's talked about after leaving Egypt. What are we doing? We're commemorating Egypt and the process. And the process at that time in the night when we're eating matzah, which is before midnight, shouldn't be commemorating the same matzah they had before midnight. So then we went to explain two differences between these matzahs based on the psukim that talk about it. The matzah before midnight, it's matzah without a vav, whereas the matzah after midnight is matzah with a vav. And we also explained that the matzah before midnight, it says you have to be guarded in order that it doesn't become chametz, whereas the matzah after midnight, the one with the vav, it says that it didn't become chametz. So we explain what the difference between these two ideas. The vav is a representative in Kabbalah of hamshach, of drawing down spiritual energy from above to below, just like a vav is like a point coming down, which is representative of when after Hashem came and revealed himself to the Jewish people in a big way, and he redeemed us, which was after midnight, after Makas Becheres, the first one. Whereas the matzah before, without the vav, is before Hashem revealed himself on that level. And also we can see the difference is that's why the matzah before midnight has to be guarded that doesn't come chametz. Meaning, what is chametz? Chametz is the feeling, in spiritual terms, that what is chametz? It's dirt, it's risen, it's the pride, it's the rising, it's the feeling of separate existence, of separateness from God. That is me separated from God, and that's why when that happens, when we have that feeling, we have that sense that God is not totally involved, our lives not total godliness, then we have to be careful that it doesn't become chametz, that our ego doesn't get in the way of serving Hashem. Whereas the matzah that's after midnight, after Hashem revealed himself, which is the one with the vav, which is the matzah that it says in the pasuk that kiloi chametz, it didn't become chametz, meaning by itself it didn't be guarded, is the lesson that there's a level that when we have that revelation of godliness, we don't have to worry about our egos getting in the way, because it's clear, obvious signs. It's like just a quick story that there was a guy once who went on to tell him, and he asked the guy to put in tefillin, and the guy goes, "I'll tell you a crazy story." He said, "I was in the Amazon with a friend of mine, in the Amazon in Brazil, and a condust wrapped himself around my friend. And so whoever doesn't know that a condom just wraps us around, and basically it constricts your ability to breathe, and then just you die, and then it just eats you." And so he was sitting there, and his friend is having, and it's very strong, and he's like, they're trying to pull it off, but nothing was happening, and I was freaking out. So his friend screams out, "Shema Yisrael Shalom Kinu." He's about to die. So he screams out Shema, and I don't know, the condom stops and unwraps itself and goes off. And he's like, my friend became religious. So they asked him, 1 second, yeah, I'm coming with you, putting on tefillin here. So it means you didn't become religious. So what happened? Like, why'd your friend become religious and you didn't? So he said, because it didn't happen to me. But the lesson is, for his friend, it was like the revelation after Mechatzos, and therefore it was so obvious, godliness is so obvious. There's no worry that his ego gets in the way. It's so obvious that God's involved. And yeah. And this is what we said yesterday. Yeah. So we'll start from the bottom of page 7. Yeah. Okay. So that's what we've explained so far. Before midnight, just one quick sum, make sure to summarize it again. Before midnight is without the vav. You have to be careful without the revelation of godliness. Be careful that it doesn't become chametz. After midnight is after God revealed himself with the vav. You don't have to worry about the denial of godliness. So now, this difference, and this is still all from the Alter Rebbe's maamer, the Rebbe is summarizing. So this difference between pre-midnight and post-midnight matzah only applies to the time before the giving of the Torah. So this is all that we've discussed is all about that first Pesach before Hashem gave us the Torah. However, once Hashem gave the Torah, a matzah which we eat each year on Pesach has both qualities, meaning the matzah which needs to be guarded from becoming chametz, pre-midnight matzah, and the matzah which is automatically prevented from becoming chametz due to the revelation of godliness in creation, post-midnight matzah. So our matzah nowadays has both aspects. The one, we have to be guard ourselves. We have situations in life that the ego does get in the way, but also we have that ability to have that clarity that it's not have to worry about the ego getting in the way, the feeling of separateness from God. The Alter Rebbe bases this on the fact that in the pasuk, which commands us to eat matzah each year on Pesach, the Torah spells the word matzahs with a vav. So when the commandment to eat matzahs every year, it says with a vav, implying the matzah we eat every year before midnight also has the advantage of the first midnight matzah. Well, like we said, the vav represents the revelation of godliness, and therefore nowadays, when the mitzvah to eat matzah nowadays, the Torah uses the word matzah with the vav, which is showing us that nowadays the matzah that we eat even before midnight, which originally the first matzah before midnight didn't have the vav, our matzah does have the vav. Yeah. Page 8. Based on this, we can now understand why the Haggadah says that we eat matzah, because the matzah forefathers didn't have time to rise, which refers to the first midnight matzah. So now we can understand why the original question was, why are we saying the matzah we eat is talking about the matzah that's post midnight? If seemingly we're celebrating the before midnight, the pre-midnight matzah. So the answer is because we eat a matzah on the night of Pesach before midnight, so we could think that our matzah only has advantage of pre-midnight matzah. We would think to ourselves that being that we have to eat the matzah before midnight, so our matzah is like the matzah, the pre-midnight matzah, the one without the revelation of godliness. So by saying that we eat the matzah because of the matzah the Jews ate after they left Mitzrayim, that God is explaining to us that our matzah and the seder, and our seder nowadays also has the advantage of the first midnight matzah because it occurred after the godly revelation of the giving of the Torah. And so therefore, we're seeing that even now, the matzah we eat before midnight has that advantage. And that's why that God is putting it in that way. Even though seemingly it wouldn't make sense to say this, but he's saying it's because it's teaching you a lesson. You should know when you're going to sit down to eat your matzah this Pesach, you're going to eat your matzah. Don't think to yourself, the matzah is a matzah without the revelation of godliness, without that ability to have clarity that Hashem is truly everywhere, and that your ego doesn't have to get in the way. It can be that way, and that's why we're saying the matzah we're eating is the matzah with the vav, the matzah after midnight. So until this point in the maamer, this has been a summary of the Alter Rebbe's explanation of Kutei Torah. So this is all just a summary of the Alter Rebbe's maamer. Now the Rebbe is going to add to this. The Rebbe now adds an additional level of depth to the advantage of the matzah that we eat today. So we're saying, at the moment, we're saying the advantage of our matzah that we have today is the fact that our matzah has the added revelation of godliness like the matzah they had back then after midnight, but us before midnight. So now we're going to take this to a whole different level. In addition to the fact that our pre-midnight matzah also has the advantage of the post-midnight matzah, the matzah that we eat before midnight, after the giving of the Torah, is even higher than the post-midnight matzah which the Jews ate leaving Mitzrayim. So now we sort of brought in these 3 levels of matzah. There's a level of matzah before midnight in Mitzrayim. There's a level of matzah after midnight in Mitzrayim. And then there's a level of matzah, our matzah now, which is even higher, which is the level of matzah after the giving of the Torah. So in addition to the fact that our pre-midnight matzah also has advantages of the post-midnight matzah, so besides the fact that what we have now, we were saying before, is before midnight that we eat it, is the matzah that it's like back in the day, the after midnight matzah, the one with the revelation. The matzah that we eat before midnight after the giving of the Torah is even higher than the post-midnight matzah, which the Jews ate after leaving Mitzrayim. So our matzah that we eat today is even greater than the matzah that the Yidden ate in Mitzrayim, out of Mitzrayim. Ours is much greater because we have matzah and Torah. So the Rebbe explains why. When the Jews first left Mitzrayim, which was before the giving of the Torah, they were naked and bare of Torah mitzvahs, which meant that they weren't able to bring about the revelation of the Holy One, blessed be He, which happened at midnight through their service of Hashem. Meaning, originally, when they had matzah in Mitzrayim, they didn't have any mitzvahs. They were not commanded to have any mitzvahs, maybe one or two mitzvahs. They didn't have any commandments. So the outcome of the matzah coming to them and having that ability to have the revelation of that matzah can bring wasn't that great because they weren't proper vessels for it. They weren't prepared for it. They didn't do anything because they couldn't. They didn't have any mitzvahs. However, we, meaning us today, after the giving of the Torah, prepare for Pesach by learning Torah and performing mitzvahs for an entire year. We have a whole year of work. We go daven every day. We have Shavuos, we have Sukkot, we have Tishrei, and we have a Avodah that we work on ourselves and we learn Torah and we do mitzvahs and things like this a whole year. So therefore, what does that accomplish? Which is able to bring about an even greater revelation. Because we prepared ourselves. It's like trying to run a marathon without any training. God might help you and might give you some good shoes or something, and so you can go relatively good. But if you were trained for a whole year, how much better you'd do? And this is what we are. We're people that have been training for a whole year. Therefore, the revelation of godliness in our matzah that we eat, that we're going to eat this year, is even greater than the revelation of godliness which the Jews experienced after they left Mitzrayim. So the revelation of godliness that we have through eating our matzah this year is greater than the revelation the Yidden had leaving Mitzrayim. So that's pretty phenomenal statement. So the Rebbe is going to try to make us understand this a little bit better. So the Rebbe explains by comparing Pesach and Shavuos. I think we'll stop here. Yeah, we'll stop here. And tomorrow we'll understand this a little better. So just to end off, what we're added here, the Rebbe's added that now there's sort of three types of matzah. The matzah before midnight in Mitzrayim, there's a matzah after God revealed himself to them with a vav. That's the post-midnight matzah. But then there's a deeper matzah, which is the matzah that we eat now. And remember, these matzahs are really representative of revelation of godliness. That the matzah before midnight is a lower revelation of godliness. And that's why we have to be God the matzah. Then there's the after midnight with the added vav, which is after God revealed himself, which is a matzah that's so great, it has been to be guarded. The feeling of godliness is very clear. And now we're explaining that there's even deeper level of a matzah or revelation, which is the matzah revelation that comes about through an entire year of work, which we've been doing. And tomorrow we're going to explain it better to try to understand what this means. But essentially what we're saying is the matzah we eat today, this year, is much greater than the matzah they had previously. And the revelation happens. You're going to ask yourself what revelation they had, matzah and Torah and stuff like that. But we'll see how ours is actually much greater.